this is how we left part 1 of our painting Shades of Grey, originally painted by Bob Ross. I'm going to turn my attention to this part of my painting. I want a nice mountain over here, but I don't want it to compete with the mountain in the distance, so pick my size carefully, and it's just going to cover this corner. So a little sketch first, and it's going to come in just a bit lower than the original waterline. Now, you've seen me do the other mountains, so I'm just going to use time-lapse through this part. My underpainting is going to be full dark colour this time. This mountain is much closer to us, and as you can see, as I paint it, it grows. Take care not to let your mountains get too big for the painting. There, I think that'll do. But I think I need something here. I think I need, yes, a transition peak. This links the distant mountains to the foreground mountain. So, a transition. Again, watch the size, doesn't get too big. So, I think it needs to be a touch bigger. Yes, just a bit more. And again, nice dark colour. I did warn you, they do tend to grow, but I think we've still got enough of an overlap. Take out some of that excess paint and we'll sort out the riverbank in a moment. Add a few highlights and a few shadows, and that transition peak will be filled in no time. Now, time for some fir trees. I'm going to use my fan for this and load the brush well. Both sides, give it a wiggle. Make sure you get those corners and edges really well stuck together. Now, have a look at the scale of things here. It's that bit bigger, so you want these to be a little taller than the ones in the distance, but don't make them too big. Work on the right size for that little piece of land, so drop in a few little markers. Double check their sizes, and if you're happy, add some limbs. I'm just using the corner of my fan brush and pressing down. Now, not every tree needs to be done. You'll see in a minute that I'd sometimes just leave the trunks and just put in branches on a few of the trees. But it fools your eye and you can't decide which ones are full trees and which ones are just trunks. Time to add a little snow with my palette knife, and this is a very shallow angle, just touch and go. Just slide the knife down to the water's edge. Put a little bit of a bright end on that. It's a little sparkler to take your eye into the background a little bit, and it gets a little wider as it comes towards you. Again, lots of little tricks. Let's pull down a little bit of colour for a shadow and brush across. They look a bit pale to me. Maybe I'll do a bit more. There we go. So always stand back. Each element needs to be looked at from the other side of the room. Now let's tackle this big mountain. Just like before, I divide it into sections. Maybe this wiggly line will be a ridge, and to the left will be in highlights, and to the right in shadow. This time I'm going to use my palette knife to add the highlights. A small roll of paint. Light hold on that knife, really gentle, and just let the paint break as it comes down the mountainside. Load a little bit of shadow colour, and the same in the other direction. Sometimes I use the back edge of the knife just for ease of application. Remember, don't overdo it with the highlights. We still want some of that original dark colour peeping through from behind. It's what gives our mountain a lovely craggy look. I'm going to use a filbert brush to paint these fir trees. Just as before, mark the centres so you know where they're going to sit. Load the brush heavily and just very lightly. Just touch and go. Leave a thick layer of dark paint on your canvas. This is very different to using a fan brush, but if you load your brush frequently, you can create some lovely sticky dark paint for a highlight to stick to. I'm not adding limbs all the way to the ground, and you'll see why in a moment. These are what I call filler trees. They sort of get us from the background to the foreground, and very often they're just a suggestion, so I won't even add limbs to these, and I may not even highlight them. Back to my old 1-inch brush. This is the one I started with, and I've dry cleaned it thoroughly. This time I'm going to load some heavy dark paint onto it, but I'm going to be very careful how I do it. Notice how I pull the brush one direction through the paint and press it to open the bristles. This is important because you want the bristles to open up and splay. Now, let's put some dark colour on my painting, rounded side to the top. This is the ugly phase of my painting, so if you've a nervous disposition, look away. I'm underpainting the bushes on the bank in the distance, and I want to just fill that gap. So I let my bushes grow and I paint them like a clock face, starting at 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 11, 10, 9, 8 going the other direction. And I want to fill this whole area with a mass of dark. Time for a wash with that brush, and let's switch out to the nice soft brush. We haven't used this very much. And it's still nice and clean, so I'll be able to put the highlights on my bushes and get rid of that ugly phase. My titanium white is far too firm, so I add a small amount of liquid white to soften it. Mix this in very well, but it still wants to be thick and buttery and to hold its shape on the knife. You can't do very good trees and bushes or snowy highlights with highlight that's too soft. Notice how shiny it is. The liquid white makes it soft but not thin. I'll use some to make a highlight for my fir trees. And again, just touch and go. Remember, just let the brush skim the branches. If you enjoy watching my tutorials and you want to support the channel, please like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment. If you want to do a bit more, you can even buy me a coffee and I'll spend the money on some more paint. There's a link down below. Thank you. Don't be tempted to over-highlight your trees. Save some dark. It's your friend. I overdid it a bit on this one. Too much highlight. Time to use my 1-inch brush to add highlights. This is my nice brush. Note I'm pulling that rounded edge directly towards me and forcing the bristles to open. Now have a look at my palette. That stippled effect is reproduced on my brush. Every little point of the bristles has got a little dot of paint on it. Rounded edge to the top. This is important that you groom in one direction and paint in one direction. And this is a super soft touch in a sort of a fan shape. I sometimes call these turkey bushes because it looks like wild turkey tails. But you can change the shape a little bit and paint one little bush at a time. Here's a close-up. As you can see, that paint is just hanging on the tips of the bristles, and after every bush you'll need to reload. Save a little dark here and there. I want to add a little feature to my painting, a cabin, and I'm going to use the shape of my palette knife to help me. I'll use the angle of the blade to set out the slope of the roof. So, scrape out the shape I need. Use firm pressure, push, and just scrape away the paint. I make sure my sidewall is longer here and tapers as it goes further back. Now, the ridge. It's important that this doesn't go up, but it's either level or slopes down. And scrape out the roof shape. But I have some problems with this. So let's have a look and see what's wrong. I often see two common problems. One, the overhang's too big, and two, the roof line is too flat. So let's fix it. That's better. Make sure that this corner is always the longest wall and that your ridge is level or slopes down slightly. Now, let's take a little bit more of that dark colour and put in the shadow under the overhang on the right. This gives our building more of a three-dimensional look. I'll add some shadow to the left side as well, and a little shadow to the face of the cabin. This needs to just be applied thinly, and I'll just make this overhang here a little bit more obvious. There we go. We're set for some snow. I'd like to take a small roll of my highlight snow colour and to just outline my roof first. So, just across the side, follow that line, a little touch above the side wall, some on the ridge and some down the face. Now reload with some more snowy paint and just slide down the side of the roof. And don't worry too much if you get a hole here and there. Maybe the snow's melted. Don't forget to add some snow above the overhang on the right. Time to add some highlights to the face of the cabin. Pick up some of this blue-grey colour again. Just a small roll, very small. And I'm going to just put in the suggestion of maybe a few old planks. Use the palette knife to cut into some of that dark colour and just touch here and there to indicate a few cracks and gaps in the wooden planks. It's a small detail, but when you get up close, it really adds some lovely details. I'm going to scrape out where I want a door. Just remove that highlight paint and then use the small blade of the knife, a little bit more of that dark colour, just to gently block in a lovely deep shadow. And to finish it off, I'll use a little bit of the snowy white paint to outline the door. Again, it just adds a little more character to this old cabin. Let's add some icicles too. Now we can finish off those bushes. Remember, pull it one direction through the paint, rounded side to the top, and let these just overlap the edge of the cabin. I've left some room for a little pathway, so with my filbert brush and some of that lovely soft white paint, just want to indicate some snow. Again, save a little dark here and there. It's so easy to overdo it. Well, we're almost there. Maybe just a few finishing touches. I'll get my palette knife, and in some of the darker areas, I'll just scratch away the paint to reveal the canvas underneath. Bob would call these scratchy sticks and twigs. And I'll add a few extra details using the edge of my knife just to slide in and out of that dark paint, just to create a few little reeds, sticks and twigs. And finally, a signature with a little bird. And there we have it. Shades of grey. Make sure you see more of my tutorials. Like, subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell. Even leave a comment. Watch this next to get warmed up. Island Paradise. Smashing. Happy painting, people.